You have to have the courage to be misunderstood and understand that there is courage in being misunderstood. You got to understand that growth often demands decisions that don't make sense to other people. So you have to be okay with that. There's power in trusting your inner compass. There's power in trusting your gut and your intuition, even when other people question it and doubt you. You have to be okay and trust yourself. You have to be okay with it not making sense to other people, even if it only makes sense to you. Because if you don't, then you start to question your own inability to think for yourself and move accordingly to make the decisions necessary for your life. Going against the grain basically means being okay with not being the favorite, with not being everyone's favorite. It's about being true to who you are and not being popular. Because you got to understand, some people make their decisions on life solely based on what other people do, how other people would feel, and how other people would see them and think of them. But that's not what you want for your life. That's not what you should want for your life. What you should want is doing what makes you comfortable, what makes you happy, what feels right to you. Because oftentimes when people make those decisions that they really don't want to make, but it's going to please other people, it's going to keep other people from looking at them weird or crazy. What often happens is later on in life, they are wildly disappointed with the decisions that they make. It's like those people who go to college and major in certain things simply because that's what their parents want for them. It's not what they want for themselves. So you have to go against the grain, be okay with going against the grain, even if other people don't understand it or agree with it. You got to understand sometimes you have to be uncomfortable because comfort is the enemy of change. When we're talking about being misunderstood and doing things, that's not technically normal. You know, Comfort is the enemy of change. And the path to least resistance, the path to least resistance is tempting. It is tempting to literally do what's easy, to do what's normal, to do what everybody else is doing. But what happens is that doesn't lead to transformation. It leads to the least transformation. You hear me? So you have to be mindful of that temptation that, like, hey, if I just do this and do it that way because that's what was told to me, then I'm gonna go with that versus saying, hey, no, like, that's not my path. It's easy. It'll get me to where I gotta go, maybe. But if I do it that way, nobody will look at me crazy. You gotta be okay with being looked at crazy, being called a little loony, all for the sake of doing what you want to do. Like, you have to be okay with not being the social norm. You have to choose discomfort sometimes. It's okay to be discomfort and not be comfortable for a while to unlock your identity, because sometimes our identity is something that we have to peel back the layers. It's like an orange. You have to peel back the layers to get to what's really there. You know what I mean? Like, you have to challenge that idea of fitting in equals success, because it doesn't. Everybody that's somebody that has lived a certain life on their terms literally went against the grain and they didn't try to fit in. You gotta understand, you weren't meant to fit in this life. And even though, like, that's the popular thing to do, is to do what everybody else is doing. Go to school, get a degree in something that you really don't care about because it's normal. Because it makes you fit in. It makes you feel good that you're not left out of certain conversations. But you have to challenge that idea. Everyone wasn't put on this earth to be the same person. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. And the sooner you can get that concept in your head, I think the better off you'll be. You got to understand that, like, life isn't a group project. Everybody's on different paths doing different things, but society will have you think that we're all supposed to be doing the same thing and taking the same routes. There's different paths in life that we can all aspire to do and be. And whatever that looks like for you, I think you should go with it. Maybe going to college isn't your thing. Maybe it's trade school. Maybe it's just being a nomad. Maybe it's just traveling the world and taking odd jobs here and now. Maybe that's your life's purpose. Maybe that's what you want, and that's what you should do. You hear me? Like, your life isn't a group project. So again, what work for somebody else may not work for you. Just because your sister went to school or your brother went to school for X amount of years and they became a successful lawyer, successful doctor, maybe that's not in your plans. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur and own a coffee shop. And maybe that brings you fulfillment. And that's okay. You have to know that that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You hear me? Like, you have to explore how comparison and approval is holding you back. That comparison and approval is keeping you from your own vision, how it water downs your vision for yourself because you're so fixated on trying to be everything everybody else wants for you that you're not being who you are and what you need to be to yourself. You're not a robot. And I think for so long growing up, we've been taught that, you go to school, you sit in class for 6 to 8 hours out the day, 8+ hours out the day, from the time we're in elementary school to high school. And then you go get a job and you work pretty much until you die. That's not a way to really live life, in my opinion. That's why I have so much appreciation for those who decided after high school that they were going to go against the grain. They weren't going to take a traditional way of living life. They decided to literally, like I said, just travel the world, figuring it out as they go along. I think that's okay. I don't think nothing's wrong with the traditional way, but some of us have that deep burning feeling that, like, this is that the most ideal way is not the way for us. You know what I mean? Like, you have to reframe disapproval as a sign that you own that you own your own lane. You hear me? That you're doing it your way by any means necessary, and you happy with that. Don't get caught up so much into how other people look at it, because you're not technically living your life for other people. You have to be, when it's all said and done, you have to be satisfied with the decisions you make, the choices you made, and how they helped you live the life that you wanted. Because if you constantly live for other people's approval, it ultimately will lead you down a path of unsatisfactory, just not being satisfied with life. You have to think about legacy over likes. What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want people to remember you? How do you want to remember yourself when you're in your 60s or your 70s and you looking back on life? Do you want to say, man, I did it my way? I lived by my own terms. I didn't follow the social norms, and I turned out all right. I did okay for myself. And maybe you don't become a billionaire, a multi-millionaire, but you did it on your own terms. You broke out of the matrix, if that makes sense. You removed yourself from what society told you should be and how you should do it. You hear me? Like, think about real impact, and think about how it comes from standing firm on your beliefs. And that even means being lonely. So you have to think about how, sometimes standing firm is going to be a little lonely sometimes, and that's okay. That's okay if you don't fit in with the people who can sit around at the bar, at the dinner table, talking about how they brokered a 7-figure deal, an 8-figure deal. You heard me? Like, your legacy is going to be how you decided to move throughout this world. Because what you don't want to do, or what you don't want your legacy to be, is regret. You know what I mean? Like, building a life, you should be focused on building a life that inspires you. Not only inspires you, but inspires the people around you. Not just to impress people or whatever, but a life that inspires other people to believe in themselves and let other people know that it's okay to do things that's not considered normal, whatever that means. Because I think normal should be whatever you choose for you. There's a certain admiration I have for people who decide to go off grid, live off the land, and just literally break out the matrix. Those people, I think, are amazing, that they choose to, like, hey, get away from society. There's nothing wrong with living within city limits and things like that. But those people who decide, like, hey, look, I'm gonna live off the land, I'm gonna sell my wood, I'm gonna sell my chicken eggs and stuff, and that's how I'm gonna make a living for myself. Versus going punching a clock to a job that they don't like. They get up and they grind every day and do it on their own. You have to decide, again, what legacy looks like for you. So when you go against the grain, you plant seeds for a legacy that others didn't have the courage and the guts to do or imagine. You hear what I mean? Like, going against the grain, it's what's gonna set you apart from everybody else, while the rest of your crew is, maybe they're making a living, but they're not really making a life. Maybe they have the money, but they don't have the time. They don't have that freedom that you may have, or that freedom that you may be seeking as someone who's deciding to not do the traditional things and take the traditional routes in life. So understand that there's a blessing in being misunderstood. It takes courage to be misunderstood. And as someone who has been going against the grain since I graduated high school, it's the best decision I've made, and it's the best decision I continue to make. Not just for me, but for my family also. So I appreciate you for tuning in to another episode of A Quick Little Word Podcast. It's your boy, Chris Wright. Be sure to check out the links for everything. Facience.com for the clothing brand and the merch. Get you something. The book is linked also, A Quick Little Word, daily devotional, something you can read every day, just as a little pick me up. You hear me? So be sure to check that out and like, comment, share, subscribe. Somebody needs to hear this. Somebody needs to know that it's okay to do things a little different, to go against the grain. So until next time, peace, love, and happiness.